everyone. Welcome to this 18th episode of Genealogy Pep Talk, a podcast. My name is Suzanne, and I'm a senior library specialist with Arapahoe Libraries here in Colorado. I have two other staff members with me who are my fellow co-hosts of this podcast. There is Cindy, a library specialist, and Katie, a career services librarian. Anyway, hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
This podcast is about gathering some tips and tricks for your family search journey for whenever you get stuck on searching for an ancestor, because it does happen. We also share with you some experiences of our own, along with anecdotes and stories in researching our own families. We have a different subject to chat about today, but not really. In the past, you, the audience, have heard us podcasters talk about Ellis Island and occasionally Castle Garden, which are both located in New York on the Atlantic Ocean side of the U.S. But today, we are going to swim over to the Pacific Ocean and to the Ellis Island version of the West Coast. We are going to Angel Island. Angel Island is in the San Francisco Bay, where it served as the immigration port for the Angel Island Immigration Station. About 500,000 people from 80 different countries were processed, detained, and/or interrogated at the site, according to the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation website. I personally have not been there, but our special guest star for this episode might know a little bit more about it. This episode's guest star is one of our associate directors for Arapahoe Libraries, and today we're talking with Cynthia. Hi, Cynthia.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. We're glad you're here. Okay, so have you ever been to Angel Island, Cynthia, or Katie, or Cindy?
Not me.
I haven't, and thank you for coming on the podcast because I wasn't even aware I was there.
Me neither.
Never been there. My genealogy search has all been online and not in person. It's my dream to go.
Excellent. I know I'd like to go to Ellis Island, but now I kind of want to go to Angel Island. It's real pretty, according to the pictures. So where do your people hail from, Cynthia?
All from Japan. The family history is that everybody has come from the Hiroshima area.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I think it had to do with, again, family lore, nothing documented. There was the Russo-Japanese War in the early 1900s, which impacted my grandparents who were of age then. And there are probably other factors as well, but lost in history.
Okay, so let's go back. Let's just start with you. Where are you from? Are you from Colorado originally?
I am a third-generation Colorado native, born and raised in the San Luis Valley.
Okay. I've been there. It's kind of dry, but it's pretty.
Very desolate and remote, for sure. But interestingly enough, my mother's family ended up in the San Luis Valley as part of the Executive Order 9066. There was a small window of opportunity where people could voluntarily evacuate, and that's what my mom's family chose to do instead of going into camp. So there was a small window of opportunity. There were less than 5,000 people who voluntarily evacuated. They had a thriving wholesale floral business in the Bay Area, and up and really just left that business. It was quite a few steps in order to voluntarily evacuate. They had to find a sponsor inland, and Colorado was Japanese friendly because of Governor Carr, who was inviting Japanese to come to his state, thank heavens.
Yeah.
And so they found a sponsor through a distant relative. They had to log their car journey, and they had checkpoints along the way that they had to check in to make sure they were, I guess, not escaping somewhere inland along the way in order to settle in the San Luis Valley.
What would have happened to them if they had not voluntarily evacuated? I'm assuming this is in 1942, soon after the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Yes, in 42. They would have gone to some concentration camp, and I'm not sure which one. There are a number of camps in the United States that were created. In fact, one of my mom's uncles did end up in not one of the regular concentration camps, but in a special one. He was, I think, had some kind of affiliation with church or was prominent in the community. So he was deemed possibly suspicious. So he ended up, we think, in a special camp in Idaho. But that's another genealogy story that I need to follow.
So I guess we should probably explain what the Executive Order 9066 is and was. Out of that 110,000 plus people who were interned, 4,889 people voluntarily evacuated between March 12th and June 30th, 1942, when the Executive Order 9066 was posted and when people were summoned to leave their homes. And so that's what you're referring to with your mother's family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my mom was only 9, and she was the oldest of the children. So trying to go off of her memories as a 9-year-old is a little sketchy sometimes, right? You only know so much.
Right.
And, the genealogy records, while they're great, they only tell you so much as well.
Right. That's
They
true.
can tell you the what, they don't tell you the why.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating.
Yeah.
So that's how my parents met, was because they ended up in Colorado, they were both there during the war. My dad's side was already living in Colorado, so they only suffered the restrictions of, not being able to go to church, not holding funerals, that kind of thing. And probably the in general prejudice that happened around being Japanese American during the war.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they eked out a living together with my mother's uncle's family.
Okay.
They acted really as one unit, and for probably cohesiveness and
Yeah,
for comfort
sure.
for each other. Eked out a living raising vegetables in the San Luis Valley, which was probably quite the challenge, because here you are at high altitude now instead of being in California,
Right.
and you've got a shorter growing season, so it was quite the challenge. And what I've heard is my grandfather in later years would wonder if going to camp would have been the easier choice. And it kind of just tears your heart to think that you're caught between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
And would that have been better than having your freedom and eking out a living for 20 people?
Yeah.
Okay, Cynthia, I just have a question about, did you learn about this backstory mostly from your family lore? Was it handed down, or was it from learning through the genealogy that you have done, or a little bit of both?
This one really, on my mom's side, has been family lore and learning about it, recognizing that my mom is a primary source of information, and being able to record that information from her directly has been awesome. It's been interesting. My mom's brother recently passed away, and a lot of the family records were with him, and so that has been unearthed, and it's been fascinating to see what kind of information there is that he had saved in terms of papers, because a lot of Japanese, when they were going to internment camps in that time period after the executive order and going to camps, a lot of people burned a lot of their history because that memorabilia would be seen as enemy or being loyal to Japan. So for me to know that my grandfather had saved his passport when he immigrated here at age 15 has been really cool to see that, because there's this picture of a 15-year-old boy coming to the United States, and that's invaluable to have even a picture and to see his passport. So we're unearthing those records, and those records are being translated. So we will maybe know more in the ensuing years or months, however long it takes to translate. There was also a trophy. It's a long, thin vase. It's dated 1930. It was, I think, Santa Clara County Flower Festival. And it's like, oh my gosh, that was saved, and it's still in pristine shape.
Oh, wow.
And just to know that that's there in the family is really cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is great.
How many family members on both sides have come over here to the U.S.?
All of them. They were all all my grandparents were first generation immigrants to the United States in various ways, stages, and forms. And then trying to, discern and find their history has been the challenge. On my husband's side, there aren't that many family members. In fact, there are no family members to be able to ask of the history. So, lost an opportunity there in the years since I had gotten married to ask for that kind of information. Luckily, one of my husband's cousins, they had a lot of the records. So it's interesting that there's somebody in the family, if there were records, that somebody in the family had them. So we are in possession of them. And one of the things that I think I have is something called a koseki, which is, if you're familiar with koseki, it's kind of it's a family register. And so in Japan, there was such a thing as a family register. All Japanese households had them. In your koseki, you made note of births, adoptions, deaths, marriages, and divorces. And so if someone was divorced, there was like a big X, I think, in the koseki.
Wow.
And so for that to have remained over the millions of years, not millions, but for the long time that, and I think I have it. I say I think because I have to verify it and find someone who will translate it accordingly. One of the things in Japanese history is the writing has changed. And so over the years, some of the old handwriting and characters are no longer used, have been modernized. So finding somebody who can read the old Japanese will be our challenge. But I'm looking forward to that.
Can you read any new Japanese?
I cannot read any Japanese, unfortunately.
Can you speak the language?
No.
No.
It was because of the war.
Yeah.
That my parents spoke Japanese and English. Their parents spoke only Japanese, and then it wasn't kosher for us kids to learn Japanese, so I never learned. Yeah, that's where the MyHeritage database has been invaluable. I'm so glad that our library carries that database, because I could do all sorts of research at home in my jammies and not have to come to a library.
Right.
So that's where all of my research so far has been, and I'm really grateful that those manifests have been digitized over the years to be able to glean that, because if you scroll clear across a manifest, they need to list your closest relative. And so that is where, I've been able to find the name of like a great-grandparent.
Right.
And the town that they lived in Japan. So that could be a clue when I have the time to be able to go and trying to go further back in the research, or to find if there are like current relatives, because there were current relatives. My grandparents had siblings who didn't immigrate to the United States, and so being able to use that as that clue has been awesome. Because how else would I be able to know where I'd come from?
I was just thinking, have you ever looked into a Japanese American club to gain some knowledge that way and some networking?
No. I did find a few years ago, maybe this was even like right during COVID, because that would have been a great time to be at home. There was a Japanese genealogist who came upon the horizon that I hadn't heard about. Linda Harms Okazaki is her name. I think I have it right. Her website is lindasorchard.com. Her specialty is Japanese genealogy. And so I took her class. There was one offered here in Denver. And then she later offered a multi-part class looking at various aspects of Japanese genealogy specifically. So using her research and work as my basis, that's what got me started into more depth with looking for relatives for the four branches of the family, on both husbands and my side of the family. The other neat thing about having an alien case file, at least cool from my point of view, probably not from her point of view, was that she had to record all of her places of residence over the years. And she was pretty good about that. So by doing so, I could find out when she moved from Lodi, California, to Stockton, to camp, to Rohr, the concentration camp in Arkansas, and I have her barrack number.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's,
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's on the list, bucket list of,
yeah, for
to
sure.
go visit that barrack specifically.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's probably in the record anyway, but for me to have unearthed it and found
Yeah.
it specifically, as well as, the family number, because every
Right.
family is issued a number.
Yeah.
Have you gone to Japan, or is that a goal to go to Japan and visit some of the places where your family is from?
Great question. Yes, I've been to Japan 6 years ago now for the first time. And this is a big bucket list, is to go back. This time to be able to see if we could find the family grave sites, because there are family sites in cemeteries, right? Probably not uncommon.
Yeah.
But to try and go specifically for that reason, to see if we could find that, would be really the ultimate for me. So that's where doing all this background research, to be able to go and find those specific towns, and then probably to have to ask somebody where those specific cemeteries are, probably associated with churches, would be the find.
Yeah, definitely. Have you through any of your research, you said that there were like what would be like great aunts and uncles and whatever that stayed there. Have you found any like living relatives anywhere? No.
No, can't locate them. Again, I have an address for a great uncle who had stayed in Japan. So being able to track that down would be amazing. And there's a language barrier.
Yeah.
To go to Japan, I couldn't just, on the street in Tokyo ask,
Right.
where would this person be?
Right. Where are my people?
That's right.
Yeah.
But so trying to figure that out would be
Yeah.
would be something to do. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. We want you to go on your second trip.
Thank you.
Right.
Let's start a Send Cynthia to Japan fund.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, go have fun me. Okay, so I mentioned real brief about the Amachi, Camp Amachi. So this is a historic site now, and it is an internment camp here in Colorado. And so I was going to ask you, Cynthia, have you ever been there, visited, or had family members there?
We visited fairly recently, our first trip there. It was of no specific family history value to us because we didn't have any family members at Camp Amachi. However, because that was in Colorado after the war, there were a number of people who lived there who had settled in Denver, but very desolate, remote. There is a recreated barrack there, and the high school does a great job at that particular site over the years of keeping the history alive, recreating. I think they're the students there, high school history students maybe, specifically recreated the barracks, and they're doing a great job of preserving a lot of it. There's a barrack and there's a guard tower there.
Wow.
And you can go and you can see some grave sites that are still there.
Really? Oh. So, Katie, did you find any interesting information for us?
Yeah, so I found a couple different things. First of all, I was looking up Koseki, and I know Cynthia mentioned, trying to get it translated, and I thought, okay, how does one go about doing that? And there's several websites that you can go to. There's a Kokoro Communications, and that's a Koseki translation, Japanese Family Register. And then there's a transjapan.com, English translation for Koseki. This one is it's Japanese-translators.saeculii.com, and it's accepted certified translation. One of the other ones is densho.org, which is actually one of the sites that I had looked up that features family history and genealogy for Japanese American families. So they have quite a lot of information there. That's densho, DENSHO.org. The National Archives has quite a bit of information that you can request or that you can find about Japanese Americans, and especially in their incarceration or internment. Ancestry.com, of course, has information. And interesting, the Library of Congress has some research guides about the World War II internment and Japanese origins. Then of course there's PBS has, as I was looking for these sites, then PBS has a special that came up. It's called Children of the Camps, and it's a history, so like a documentary on internment camps. But those are just some of the resources that I found. So there are quite a few resources.
And I'll make a plug for Densho. They're a great resource for collecting Japanese American history. They're doing podcasts as well and videos of people and trying to capture their camp or World War II experience, which is invaluable because there aren't as many people around anymore, and they are of age. So it's a wonderful resource.
Let me go back to explain this because it's a really good story. It's by the author of Dan Simmons. It's called The Terror. And The Terror is set in around 1848 on two ships going to the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. And so they get stuck there. And then all kinds of things happen because they have to try to survive for 3 years and find their way home. Okay. They made this into I believe, a Netflix series. And the first season was great. We have the DVD, by the way. Then the second season, they made it, and I thought it was going to be a continuation of that story, but it's actually quite a different story. But it's called Infamy, and it's based on the real-life childhood of George Takei, who, is Lieutenant Sulu in Star Trek. He served as an inspiration for the events of the series. And it says here, funny enough, Takei and his family spent 3 years in an internment camp behind barbed wire in an Arkansas swamp. Anyway, so if you would like to maybe see George Takei and understand some of his experience based on his life, but a little bit fictional, then try The Terror, which is season 2. So, Katie, what is the graphic novel that we were talking earlier with Cynthia about?
So George Takei created a graphic novel about his experience in the camps, and it's called They Called Us Enemy. And I read it, and it was wonderful and very moving and just like very eye-opening. But one thing I really appreciated about it is that it's very approachable, and it makes the subject easier for a wider audience to discover what things were like. So
What age group do you think? What age group do you think?
Tweens and up. So like
Okay.
10, 12 and up. It's highly suitable for adults. Obviously as well, but I would think probably much younger than 10, they're probably not really going to grasp the subject matter. But I would say probably, those preteens, teens and up would benefit from it or enjoy it.
Yeah. And Cynthia, as a librarian?
In general, I do tend to read a lot of Japanese American fiction and nonfiction. I talked about Governor Carr, mentioned him briefly earlier, and wanted to share the title, The Principled Politician, The Story of Ralph Carr. It was written by Adam Schrager, and he does a great job detailing Governor Carr's history, his open arms welcoming of Japanese to Colorado, and by doing so, he really sabotaged his own career. So talk about principled. It's a great story. A small piece of history that I don't think a lot of people know about.
Yeah. I don't think I knew.
Yeah, and I'm curious, do you know why? Have you seen, is there a reason why he was so open to the Japanese Americans, or he just didn't like what he saw?
I think he didn't like what he saw, based on the Constitution of it, constitutionality of the whole thing, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Wow. I'm definitely going to have to read up on this because that's just fascinating.
Yeah.
There's a book that I saw when I was shelving, and sometimes you just stand there and read it.
Yeah.
It was in the kids section, and it's called, and it's a nonfiction book. It's called Write to Me: Letters from Japanese American Children to the Librarian They Left. It's about Japanese American kids who corresponded with their librarian while they were in a World War II internment camp. Some of them are difficult to read, some of them are funny, some of them are. So it's a really, and it's just a kid's picture book. You can read it in 5 minutes, but it's just a really great book, especially for young children to learn about, this is what happened to them. And it's just such an awesome book.
Do you see a category it's listed under?
It is listed in our library. It is listed in, easy nonfiction. It's a 940.
Oh, okay.
So it's a nonfiction book, and 940 is the World War II section.
Got it.
But it's really a moving book.
And also, I love that, librarians it just shows that librarians are awesome, and who doesn't love their local librarian?
Yeah.
Say the librarians.
Yeah.
So there's another book that is also by George Takei. It's called My Lost Freedom, and it is a children's book. Yeah, it's an easy biography, and it's under his last name, which is Takei. But it's called My Lost Freedom, a Japanese-American World War II story. All right, so I think that it about wraps it up here. We've learned a lot. I know I have in chatting with Cynthia. So thank you, Cynthia, for sharing your story, your family's story. We do appreciate it. Any other words of wisdom or nonsensical?
Funny anecdote, when my dad was in Okinawa during Vietnam, when I went to visit Japan, I was trying to learn a few phrases, and so I believe it's thank you. He taught me how to say it, and it's doitashimashite, but he said that the servicemen remembered it because it sounds like don't touch the mustache.
Oh.
So that's my funny little Japanese story.
Well, from my college roommate, she would say bachi is kind of like karma. Do you know this?
Yes.
So if we were talking mean about somebody and then we'd walk across the room and stub our toe or something, she'd say bachi, that's your bachi.
My dad was in the Air Force, and he went in after World War II, but he ended up being a photographer in like an aerial whatever they do when they look afterwards, and he was stationed in Japan. And he had, for the longest time, I don't even know if I have it in a box. He's been gone for a few years now, but he had a Japanese, not a kimono, but a silk robe that we carried with us for a long time. So he never wore it. Because, and then he and a buddy got these, purchased these cool rings, and just a beautiful blue jewel, and I can't remember what it is. And he had it up until he passed. So anyway, so that's our Japanese little tidbits. Thank you for the big tidbit of Japan history in your life and your upbringing and so forth. So thank you again, Cynthia.
Or we should say arigato, which is thank you in Japanese.
And this is the disclaimer that we always do. The three of us are not certified genealogists. We are just three people who are sitting around and having a great chat about genealogy. We hope that all of this information helps you along the way to finding your family. Thanks for listening. Okay, say goodbye, people.
Goodbye, people.
Goodbye. We'll see you.